Okay, I've got to little apologies first to my guest today, Alan Graham. My mate. Normally, when I do my these little recordings, I have a little studio set up in Toowoomba. I use it's got a nice little background, but I'm down in Brizzy at the moment. So we've got the plain background, but I was going to put something behind me, but I thought, well, two good-looking roosters like us, it's probably enough eye candy for anybody to manage anyway, mate.
Yeah, fair enough. Good point, mate.
Mate, just to give some context to people too, anyone who's randomly watching this doesn't really know much about me. I'm a Queenslander. I'm from the state of Queensland in Australia, and we're pretty proud of our Queensland Spirit here. And a big part of that's our sporting spirit we have, which was on fine display this weekend with our AFL team and our rugby league team, the Broncos, coming back to get in the finals. It was a big Queensland weekend. But one of the centre points, we've got a couple of places. We've got the Gabba, which is a major sporting venue for us, but we've also got another one called Suncorp Stadium, which is a bit of a sacred ground. And Alan's been the protector of that sacred space for a long time, and also played a major role in looking after the legacy of many of our warriors who fought there in our state of origin matches. So, mate, it's a great chance to chat to you about that journey, mate. But you also, before then, I know that you were at the Crushers, but what was your story prior to that? Like, what was the early Alan Graham journey?
Yeah, look, it has been quite a journey, and there was no set path, to be honest. It was more or less just playing what was in front of me at the time. I was in the public service for a long time, state government. Very fortunate there that I had some really interesting jobs, some great challenges. I wouldn't describe myself as a typical public servant. I don't think I ever had a flexi day in my life, and it was just a challenge. I was very fortunate. I said to work in a whole range of different areas, meet a whole lot of wonderful people, and I think all of that shapes you as a person. You learn good things from good people, and you learn things that you don't want to do from others who probably don't behave the way you'd want to behave. So you use all of that to mold where you're going to go in the future. So I was involved there for quite a long time, but got to a point where I just found the whole bureaucracy very frustrating. You were spending more time justifying what you were doing instead of actually getting out and doing it. And for me, my personality, it just didn't sit that well. So I decided I was going to move on. I didn't actually have a job to go to, but fairly soon the Crushers were starting at that time, and I was lucky enough to get a role with them in their embryonic stage, and that sort of set me on the path to being more involved in sport and certainly involved in stadiums.
So the Crushers. So we had Brothers Rugby Leagues Club, which did it become Crushers, or was it a separate entity that used Brothers Field? What was it?
Yeah, it was originally Brothers, but the Crushers took it over. So we actually were the owners of that property. There were 2 playing fields there plus a leagues club. So that was our base. We also had a fairly substantial house right next door, which we used as our office space, and upstairs was used as an academy for some of the young guys that were coming down from the country to Brisbane for the first time. So they would live upstairs as well as train on site. So it was a really good setup.
So that was your first foray into sports administration?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. And was Gilly playing for him then at that time?
Yeah, Gilly was there. We really had a great team. It's I suppose it's a well-told story, but Super League really destroyed what was a great enterprise at the time. Darryl Vanderbilt was the CEO, and Dick Turner was the chairman. And amazing people, did an amazing job putting that whole thing together. And we were really flying high at the time before Super League hit. In terms of sponsorship, in terms of sales. In terms of support, everything was oversold on what we'd originally thought. So, financially we were sitting pretty, but unfortunately Super League pretty much hit before a ball was kicked in anger, and that put paid to the Crushers' long-term prospects.
Yeah, it was sad locally because I actually grew up at the Grange, and so it was walking distance to the Crushers' field there, and it was great local vibe that everyone was into, and it had a similar feeling to me to like what the Dolphins are having now at Redcliffe here. That same coming out of that real grassroots local community.
Yeah, look, I think that's a good parallel, a good yardstick. I think the Dolphins, and they've done an amazing job. I take my hat off to them. I've known those people for a long time, as you would have too, Nick. You know, they are grassroots people, but they really showed what a second team was capable of doing. You know, fortunately, they haven't had to deal with something like a Super League, and separately to that, they're very solid financially. I think when the Crushers were started, we were actually debt funded. You know, our business model was still great. We were still going to be prosperous, but unfortunately, once Super League hit and player payments went up like they did, and revenues went down because crowds fell off, we really didn't have much chance to survive.
And talking about Redcliffe, boy, as you say, you started working with Tosser Turner at that time, and Tosser's, for those who don't know, one of the godfathers of State of Origin here, but also had a major influence in our Queensland community for his whole life. And mate, you were very close to him and had a long relationship.
Yeah, look, very fortunate to meet him. He was one of a kind. You know, taught me a lot. He never had any formal education, but he was one of the smartest people, the shrewdest operators you'd ever want to meet. Became very close with him. We were great mates. We did a lot together. We were down in the trenches together, but you knew he was always going to be there. He wasn't going to leave you on your own. And, I think out of some of that adversity, you do build strong relationships. And, we maintained that relationship until, unfortunately, he passed away. But as part of the ongoing journey, we were fortunate enough he and I, to start the former Origin Greats, which still survives today and still keeps his memory alive. Because he was such an integral part of that. And, it just shows you the esteem that he was held in by, some of the greatest players of all time. He was the glue that actually attracted people like the Arthur Beetsons and the Chris Close and all of those people to form Fogs. And it was because he had their respect and their support that we were able to set up an organisation that is still thriving today. And I contrast that with New South Wales, who've been trying to set up a Fogs organisation ever since and still haven't been able to do it, even though there's some good people involved, and we've certainly worked hard to try and help them. But I think there's too much fragmentation there. They don't have that quintessential leader that is going to pull everyone together. There's, you end up with a lot of different agendas and, people pulling different ways. And, it's just led to a situation where they don't have what we've got, even though they'd love to have it, and we'd love them to have it as well.
Mate, excuse me there. Just on Tosser for a moment, as I was saying to you before, I'd love to do an episode sometime with a few people and we talk about his legacy. But I did a chat a couple of weeks ago with, I don't know if you know Bunga Johnson at all, but...
Yeah, I did know
Bunga, and he was talking about his boxing days and his early days of sparring with Lionel Rose and that. He said they'd be at the gym and it was a really great day when Tosser would turn up just to watch him sparring. He said it was inspirational just to have him there. He'd come off from the wharfs or work his business down there, and he'd come in and just encourage everyone doing it. So that's a great thing. And I think from a Queenslander looking to what that challenge New South Wales has had, I think we were probably lucky in the sense that Origin came up at a time for us when we really only had the Broncos, in the sense, like, I know we had Crushers early on, but the Broncos are the main team for the city. Whereas I think, and so we're able to come around the Broncos and we're able to come around State of Origin. Whereas New South Wales previously had so many clubs down there that people were sort of so tied into their clubs that I don't think they've really united the same way that Queenslanders were able to.
Yeah, look, there's probably a bit to that, I guess. Although, bearing in mind Origin started well before the Broncos did. Yeah. I think the Broncos didn't come in till about 88. And so Origin started in 1980. And I think for us, the other part of the puzzle was that for so many years, and I certainly came through that era where all of our good players were going down and playing for Sydney, therefore getting for New South Wales. And then they would come up here and beat us every time. And I think Origin balanced the scales a little bit and put it back into perspective to say, well, we've actually got, and I think we've proven that we've got the better players. We've done that over a long period of time, but at least they're able to play now for the state they were born in rather than where the money is or was in those days.
Mate, yeah, and I remember as a kid going to Lang Park, as it was in those days, named after the J.D. Lang, and one of the great politicians who actually was the main driver of the state of Queensland really coming into being. So we had, as a kid growing up, Lang Park, and I remember sitting in that crowd and cheering. We'd scored 2 points in a game, being thrashed by New South Wales, but at least we scored something. And then, of course, when they were redeveloping and becoming Suncorp Stadium, they took those games to ANZ Stadium. And I was really lucky at that time with Rupert McCall, Tosser Turner, and Mr. Livermore. They'd sort of asked Rupert to write an Origin song. So him and I got together and wrote that song. And we ended up playing out in the middle of the field for the last game of ANZ Stadium and then for the first game at Suncorp Stadium. And that was a thrill, actually turning up in the middle of that field of Suncorp and picturing what it was as Lang Park to what it developed to as Suncorp Stadium is just a great experience. But mate, what year did you take over as GM at Suncorp?
Well, I actually had a couple of stints there. So after the Crushers folded, or as the Crushers were folding, I left. And in those days, the Queensland Rugby League had the management rights for, I think it was called Suncorp Metway Stadium in those days.
Right.
So this was what, 90, this would have been about 96, I think. Mm-hmm. And Ross Livermore, who also became a very good friend, actually rang me one day and said, look, now that you're not involved with the Crushers, would you like to come and run the stadium, for us? And which I did. So I actually had a couple of years there working for the Queensland Rugby League, running what was the forerunner for the current stadium before it was pretty much pulled down and rebuilt. Had a couple of years off in between during that rebuilding stage, but then came back when the stadium was reopened in 2003. I joined the management team then as GM, and that was I think we started about 6 months before the stadium actually opened, because there was still a lot of stuff, a lot of things to be finished off. We had to be involved in a lot of the fine tuning and detailed design on the finished product. So that was 2002. And I finished up about 2 months ago. So about 23 years I was involved there, all but 2 years. I did have 2 years off. I went and worked for Fogs for a year, for my Origin Greats, and then I went over to Beijing in 2008 and did the Olympics over there. So I lived over there for a year.
Yeah, right. And was that with AEG over there, with the Olympics over there? Was it?
Yes, it was. Yeah. So Harvey listed Rob Pilbeam, who founded the original company, and it was Ogden IFC in those days. They then went into a JV with the American company AEG, and that was in about 2007, I think. And one of the projects that AEG had on the go was that they had a project of completing and operating the Beijing Olympic basketball arena.
The MasterCard Centre. The MasterCard Centre.
Yeah, and sorry,
the MasterCard Centre. Was it called?
It may be now.
I was there.
I'm not sure.
Shortly after them, I remember they had it then, and we had good friends because I was doing in China. Good friends with the major ticketing company over there, and they were talking about there are a lot of challenges in Beijing for a company running in Beijing, and I think AEG ended up pulling back more to Shanghai and doing the Mercedes Centre. That was a big one for them in China.
That's right. So this was a foot in the door for AEG in China. And so they needed someone to go and run that venue, and I just happened to be available. So I went over there, lived over there for 12 months.
Did you enjoy your time in Beijing?
It was amazing, absolutely amazing. Massive challenge. Yeah. It really was, and I could write a book on some of the stuff that happened over there. It was just incredible. But, we got through where everything was successful. And I think two things that, I take away from that is that, first of all, we left them with a good quality multi-purpose venue. that we had to sort of more or less construct following the Olympics, because usually you build the venue and then you modify it temporarily for the Olympics for 2 weeks. This was the other way around. They actually built the venue based on the Olympic requirements and then had to modify it for its longer term use. But the good thing is that it is able to run a whole range of events now, not just basketball. They can do, ice hockey, concerts, conferences, you name it. It's got all the capability there to be able to do that. And I think the other good legacy that we were able to leave is that when we were there, China had no venue management industry to speak of. No skills, no training, no experience. Everything was pretty much run by the army. They would come in, unlock a venue, people would go and use it, and then they'd clean it and lock up again. What we were able to do, because we recruited a lot of local people and trained them, what we're seeing is that that was the genesis for a very productive and well geared up venue management industry in China. And a lot of the people that we recruited and trained are now running venues themselves right across the country.
Absolutely. I had a 10-year journey going over there and did many trips and saw. I was right in the heart. When I first got there, everything was pretty much government run, and it was like everything was government supported and not really done that great. There's bureaucracy gets in the way. But that transition they went to, where they actually started working with some of the Western companies like you guys and really learning those skills more and just transforming what they do into, I know from the music industry point of view, it's just a major events they're putting on all the time brilliantly, and really grown it from a very commercial point of view. They encourage so many young businesses to develop and grow and in that space. So it was a really exciting time there, mate. At Suncorp, we could probably talk for about 25 weeks on the experiences you had there, but between the music and the sport and everything else going on there, you probably get asked this a million times, but what are your standouts?
Yeah, look, there's no favourite daughter. There's a whole range of events and highlights. And just going back, I think just getting the venue open to start with. The challenge we had there was that we only got the keys to the venue 2 days before our first game. So it was still a building site up until that point. We didn't have any officers on site. Our offices were across the road. We didn't have any free access. Anytime we went in, it was always under the supervision of the builders. There were areas you couldn't go to because they were, under construction. So to turn that around and get everything up and running in those couple of days, and I think we had about 46,000 people along to that first game, and everything went quite well. We had an Origin game, I think, maybe a week after that. And then, it just took off from there. But I think that was a big highlight because it was such a huge challenge, to do everything we needed to do to get ready in that short space of time. I think certainly, some of the bigger matches we've had there, which have just been incredible. Any Origin game that Queensland wins is always a great game.
Yeah.
There's games that we've had there that's been phenomenal. I look back at other concerts as a classic. When the stadium was built, the commitment there would be no concerts at the stadium. That was part of, I guess, a commitment to the local community who were concerned about having, a big juggernaut in their backyard and worried about the impact it was going to have on their lives. I think one of the things we were able to do very successfully in the first couple of months was to clearly show the local residents that it wasn't something to be feared, that, we did have a system in place. We had operational plans and traffic management arrangements that were going to provide them with protection. And it soon became a situation where a lot of that opposition went away. And, to the point now where, there are very little issues that the locals have with the stadium. We get very few complaints from local residents. So that's been an interesting journey. But as part of that, we were able to convince the government that we really did need to run concerts there. Brisbane needed a major venue for some of these international touring acts. And so 2006, the government introduced special legislation to allow us to run concerts at the stadium. I think we were allowed to run 3 initially, and there are a whole. Sorry.
So what was the first ad there?
That was Robbie Williams, and he did 2 shows back to back.
Yeah.
And I've got to say, he's still one of my favourites. He's just an incredible performer, and for one bloke to hold the stadium of 50,000 people, or to capture their attention and to entertain them, is an amazing feat. And so he was incredible. Not long after that, we were able to get the number changed to 4 per year. Subsequently, we got that changed to 6. Last year, we got it changed to 12.
Right.
Of the demand that is out there. I think all the way along, the feeling coming back from the local community was generally one of acceptance and believing that, look, the stadium was actually a benefit to the community, not an obstacle or not a disadvantage. And so there's been very little opposition to that number increasing.
And it would have been great anyway for the value of the area, wouldn't it? The properties in the area and everything like that would be a major draw card for the suburbs around it.
Yeah. Look, I always like to tell the story, and if you get on .com and Google a house in that area, if it's not in the first line, it'll be in the second one. It's either in walking distance of or glimpses of Suncorp Stadium. So it is a highlight, is a feature, and I think people become very proud of it. It's an iconic Queensland venue. It symbolises so many things for us as a culture. People really see it as their stadium, and they've embraced it that way, which is terrific.
Hey, quick commercial break. Big shout out to our sponsor for today's episode, which is me, Nick Phillips. Look, I've got to thank myself so much. I couldn't be doing the show without me. And if you get a chance, check out the sponsor's website, www.nickphillips.com. Check out my music, my videos, my bio, all that stuff, and maybe contact me and book me for a gig. That would be great. But thanks, Nick, for your sponsorship. Back to the show. Well, mate, as I said, I was sort of a bit tongue-in-cheek when I started talking, but it was the absolute truth that, we're going from Lang Park to Suncorp Stadium. It had already been an icon within the city as it was, and then to become one of the best stadiums in the world, and for Queenslanders to have the experience they've had, not just in Origin. I mean, I've been to the Raw Grand Finals there. The concerts that you talk about, the one-man show with Robbie Williams. Well, I did when my son's got us tickets to go see that last tour of Ed Sheeran's there, and talk about one man on the stage holding, I think he had about 65,000 people in the stadium on those shows, and him and his guitar was just amazing. Just so many memories of the place, mate. And from someone who, I've done a lot of events there and a lot of things there, and your organisation you had is just the best ever, and I can't ever remember having a bad experience there with the people you had working for you.
Yeah, very fortunate. We've got such a great team, and I said this quite regularly. In the lead up to my retirement, it's the best team I've ever had. Individually, they've got superb skills. They're very professional and really embrace the business and deliver above and beyond. It is a very relentless job working in the stadium industry, because it can be 365 days a year, it can be 7 days a week, it can be 24 hours a day sometimes, based on what's happening. So, you really need people who are committed to their role and to the job, and the team that are there are just outstanding. They're just amazing people.
It must have been a bit emotional walking away from your baby there at the end of it, was it?
Well, yes, it was a bit. I think, it, bearing in mind that, this had been a long-term goal for me. And so I'd made up my mind, 18 months prior that's when I was going to finish. But I guess as the finishing line gets closer, you do get a little bit emotional. As much for the people that I work with, and missing them, the relationships that I was able to establish, not just with our staff, but with the local community. I had great relationships with a lot of people in the local community, with our tenants, the Broncos, the Dolphins now, the Reds, the Raw, NRL, It's just Rugby Australia. It's just been an amazing relationship. People like Suncorp, for example, have been the naming rights sponsor there for so many years. Technically, 30 years was when they first started. As I said, as Suncorp Netway, but they've maintained their ambition to continue a long-term partnership there. They see the great benefit for them, and certainly from a stadium point of view, we see a great benefit as well in maintaining that consistency, because there's so many places around Queensland and around Australia who change their name so regularly that people get confused as to who they are, what they stand for, and whereas I think you jump into a cab at the airport and say, "Take me to Suncorp," and the driver's going to take you straight to the stadium.
Exactly. I won't drag you into the politics of it, mate. This is just my comment. But there's certain radio station that won't say the name on there, and they'll talk about the name of every other stadium around the country, which I've never really understood. Yeah. And Suncorp, it was such an iconic Queensland bank. It was a good fit all round, and I don't think there's been any issue with Queenslanders, knowing the Suncorp Stadium. Or it's just ingrained now generationally. That's what it is.
Well, it is now, and there's a whole generation that have never known it as anything other. Interesting you talk about that radio station, and obviously they've got their own protocols and perhaps some good reasons in their mind as to why they shouldn't use those names. But a challenge for us was always, whenever we were doing an interview with that station, would be to see how many times we could get Suncorp into the interview.
Good, and of course, I won't drag Alan.
Mate, having said that, I had some great relationships with that station. Really good people. They were very supportive of us, and very fortunate to have built those relationships.
Look, the ABC radios are very important to our community and everything, and I great friends there as well. And I'm sure it's been an executive decision thing that's got more politics behind it than anything else. But it's just a bit sad in that sense that there's so many other stadiums that they don't have an issue with, but that one they did. Anyway, that was diverging a little bit, mate. I imagine you're going to be you'll be okay for getting tickets for events there, mate. You've probably got contacts there still, I presume, so you'll be all right. But talking about getting tickets for the place, I know you've told this story numerous times, but there was a time where a lot of our former State of Origin players were finding they couldn't get tickets to go. So you and Tossa decided to do something about it and fix that up a bit, correct?
Yeah, well, that was technically how FOG started. And this would have been, I think it was about 97.
FOG's is former Origin greats, so former Origin players.
Former Origin greats, yeah. So anyone who's played State of Origin for Queensland automatically becomes a FOG. Yep. And they get their own specific number. I'm pretty certain that we were the first organisation anywhere to introduce that numbering system for players, which now carries over onto a whole range of different sports. But and that was more out of necessity, because we wanted to form a club and we need to have a number for people. So it was, well, what do we do? And let's start from number one, which was Arthur. And then as people were selected, they got their number based on that. But that was the reason for starting it up, was that a lot of these players could not get a ticket to State of Origin. In fact, I'm talking 1997, a lot of those players hadn't even seen each other for 17 years, because there was just no movement that was putting these people together. They just went their own separate ways and lived in their own communities and did what they did. So we actually put on a reunion initially, bankrolled 100 tickets, managed to track down as many of the players as we could, got in touch with them. Technically, they bought their tickets, but we also then arranged for a reunion dinner up at the Caxton for them. And we had a little bit of merchandise that they wore as well. And that was the first time they'd been together, for 17 years. But that was, as I say, that was really the embryonic start of FOGs. From there, that mateship, that commitment, that unity of purpose meant that we had the genesis for a really strong, solid organisation, and so FOGs has kicked on.
You talk about your dinner up the Caxton. How great have the Farquhar boys been up there and supporting the whole spirit of it all? Hey, never a dinner they'll miss putting on for you.
No, they've been terrific, become very good friends over the years. You know, I'm so fortunate with those, you know, just about all the traders in that street. You know, the Gambaras, very good friends of mine, the Farquhars. And yes, you know, I've always seen Caxton Street as a bit of an extension of the stadium. You know, when we're chasing big events, things like Magic Round and some of the other big ones that we do chase, it's actually an advantage to be able to sell that to hirers, to say, hey, it's not just the 2 hours at the stadium. You know, it can be 2 or 3 days beforehand with events in Caxton Street. It can be in Caxton Street on the night, it can be in Caxton Street after the game. You know, it's a real benefit for the area and certainly for the traders.
A lot of those things, like with the legend of the stadium, the organic things that happen too, that add to the story and the whole almost journey of the place. Like those early days of the New South Wales bus coming down Caxton Street through the Queensland supporters, kind of put Caxton Street on the map. And then, you know, and around any stadium like that, you need an entertainment precinct where people can go to and bounce to. And Caxton Street's been great for that. But mate, the Fogs, you've gone on from that initial dinner to having something that's playing as far as I'm aware, a major fundraiser role for certain entities, puts on events, helps a lot out with rural sport, I think, regional sport, and gives a way for people to keep remembering what those players did and what they did for our Queensland community. Is that right? You've expanded to a lot more things?
Oh, absolutely. Look, it's a fully fledged business operation now. We've got about 25 to 28 full-time staff. The area that we're spending a lot of time on now is more in the educational area, particularly for Indigenous people. One of the big challenges that the education departments are finding, both nationally and state-wise, is just getting particularly Indigenous kids just to go to school. And so we've actually worked up programs. We've got specialist teachers that work these programs and either run them in schools or provide the training mechanisms or the incentives to the schools themselves to run the programs. And so that's what it's all about, firstly getting people to school, then it's about trying to enrich their lives through other opportunities. For example, one of the things we do now is we're very heavily involved in driver license training, because one of the things that a lot of these students are going to need is a license. But as you know, they've got to go through 100 hours of training, which is, quite a big hill to climb if you're in a disadvantaged area where you don't have ready access to a vehicle. So we've got a number of cars, we've got a number of volunteers that go around and actually provide those services. So I guess that's a fulfillment component, at the end of their education, where they can hopefully walk away with the driver's license, which is going to give them a better chance of getting a job and fulfilling their destiny. So we're currently involved from primary school right through to high school with a range of programs, and that runs right throughout the state. And we've got some very, very clever people that run and develop those programs. And that's probably the flag bearer for Fogs, the main thing that we do. But it does allow us to make sure that we've then got capacity to support things like grassroots football, junior rugby league, raise money for charity. There's a whole range of things that Fogs do and do really well, and can put something back into the community that supported them.
Well, that's great to hear about the driving. I mean, it's been an argument I've had for pretty much all my life. We live in a state where driving is essential. We've got reasonable public transport, but Queenslanders need to drive. It's a big place, and you've got a lot of roads. And I never understood why it was never something in schools that was part of, defensive driving wasn't part of what you learned, because everyone comes out of school and drives. And the most dangerous time to be driving is when you're just out of school and you're just learning your skills first, and you may have a car that's a bit too powerful for you. That's something we should learn. And I didn't know you guys were doing that, but that's awesome, because that makes so much sense to me. Yeah,
well, certainly a practical contribution. As well as that contribution on the educational side, and just using the using the reputation of the players, because
Mm-hmm.
they do act like bees to a honeypot, that they can actually get the attention of people and command a bit of respect. Not that authoritarian type of approach, but more a collaborative one. One where if they're respected by the people they're talking to, then there's more chance the message is going to get through.
Yeah, but I know that AFL are also really active in a lot of the regional areas with their things they do with kids and the Indigenous communities too. Do the codes work together, or is it like kind of competition in that space, or how's it sort of work in that way?
Well, it's reasonably fragmented because everyone has their own particular projects. One of the things we have started doing more recently, and I'm talking about folks, is that we've started to build a relationship with the Bulls Masters, which is a similar organisation that was set up for all of the cricketers who played cricket for Queensland.
Yeah, right.
And so very similar in that sense. And, I've got some very close friends who are involved in that organisation. So we've been able to start looking at opportunities there. We did a lunch last week, a joint lunch between FOGS and the Bulls Masters to celebrate 30 years since Queensland won the Sheffield Shield, but also to celebrate 30 years since the 1995 Neville Nobodies wiped the floor with New South Wales 3-0. And that was our first joint venture, but we're looking at doing a few others around the state, and there is that opportunity for that sort of collaboration for sure.
Mate, you're incredibly brave. I mean, I've been fortunate to do some events around the place over the years with people like Tommy Radonicus and Mal Meninga and things like that, and the events were often interesting and that a lot of fun was had. And now you're going to bring cricketers and footballers together. I mean, that's kind of like, talk about people management to the nth degree for party times.
Yeah, look, and like I said, I've spent a lot of time with the cricketers, and there are some very funny people, but who are really genuine, and look, I go away on a lot of the trips with the Bulls Masters. They do a lot of stuff in the country, and I'm full of admiration for the effort they put in, running coaching clinics, raising money for the local cricket teams or the local cricket clubs. It's just incredible. So I think, combining those two organisations in not in a total sense, but certainly in a project sense, we'll do that on a case by case basis. Just bringing the the strength that each has got to the table and put that into one cause can have a pretty profound effect.
Mate, it's pretty amazing too, the amount of characters there are in our top sports, and for any businesses and that are putting on corporate events, have some of these sportsmen come and tell their stories and have some fun. It's great. It's a great experience. So it wasn't a corporate event, but did you know Peter Green at all? Publican, had Jackass Gingers in Caxton Street.
Yeah.
Pete passed away a while ago, and at his funeral, we had Jeff Thompson and Carl Rackham get up front and just tell stories about them all growing up together. And it was the most hilarious, fun, but respectful in a fun way, because we're telling all these stories. But the stories that Carl and Tomo could pull out were just amazing. And but if people want to get former, great sportsmen to speak at their events, is that something they can do through the FOGS?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, through FOGS, and then certainly with the cricketers through Bulls Masters. And you're right, Jeff Thompson is hilarious. He really is. He doesn't have a filter when he's up in front of a crowd.
Or on TV,
and he tells the funny stories. And Carl is actually noted as a famous storyteller in his own right. Yeah. And you can sit and listen to those blokes for hours. Rugby league had some as well. There's some amazing people in that side of it. But I think of some of the others and which people you mightn't normally be aware of, but people like Adam Gilchrist. Mm-hmm. Such a funny man. He could almost do stand-up. They've just got so many amazing stories. I'm sure the stories get embellished, as the years go by. But they're entertainment in their own right. One of the others that we're both using Bulls Masters, Fogs, and also through the stadium is Sam Kekovich.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen
Yes, I
Sam.
have.
But he is, the funniest man ever, and he's so politically incorrect because he refuses to be politically correct. But he's a very
Exactly.
funny man.
I did a chat a couple of weeks ago with Steady Eddie. I don't know if you remember Steady Eddie, the comedian with the multiple sclerosis. And
Yeah.
mate, that whole public speaking comedian space is just so good. And I think I'm actually trying to investigate too how we can get some of the the musicians in the later stages of their careers now to come through and do some speaking things too, because they got some amazing stories from days on the road and what the music industry was like. And I think a lot of people who run businesses and do corporate events, a lot of them either have a music or a sports background. So it kind of ties in a lot to they have that passion there for one or the other, and to have some of these sports people along to talk at their events or be at their events is something that hopefully we can do more of.
Oh, look, it's absolutely remarkable. I've been fortunate to become good friends with Russell Morris, and it's only when you really look at his career and what he did, you realise what a special person he was. Great musician. I think always had this image that he was just a singer, but he's not. He wrote some great songs. He performed some great songs. He's a talented musician. He wrote songs for other people. He's got so many stories, and a list of who's who of the people that he's known and worked with over the years. Just goes right back to, I guess, the grassroots of pop music.
Also, he was one of the guys who, at the time, made a lot of headway in Australian artists getting into the States. He went over there at the time when there was Zoot and Brian Cadd and Rick Springfield. They were all kind of over there with Russell and all putting those pathways into America. And the stories they've got around that are just really amazing. So and I took Glenn. Do you know Glenn A. Baker at all?
I don't.
Yeah, Glenn.
I
took Glenn over to China for a trip, and that was because he does a lot of travel writing as well as the music writing, and that was a great time over there. But great, so many good stories. But the Fogs, mate, it's just I imagine that it's just going to keep growing and growing from here, because Origin's certainly not getting any smaller.
No, I think, rugby league itself is on fire. You've only got to look at this year with record crowds and record viewership. And there's been so many amazing games. The Origin series was just incredible. The result went the right way, of course, which was even better. But then, you look at, I actually did go to the Broncos game yesterday to watch them play Penrith. And what an amazing game, an amazing result. And a lot of happy people walking away from that game. It's setting up a great grand final for next week.
I was playing down at Varsity Lakes Tavern yesterday, Arvo, and obviously we were all watching it as the game went on. And even across the telly, the noise of that stadium at the end of it just seemed to be like, some of the loudest I think I could imagine ever hearing there at the stadium.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just the way the game went and the way it was won, I think really created that sort of that suspense and the tension, the excitement, the emotion. It was just absolutely incredible.
It almost feels sad for Melbourne already,
Well, I think, but we're it's not beyond us, so they've just got to keep putting in like they did yesterday, and get the foot on the throat and don't.
Mate, the whole Queensland spirit through sport and the stadium, and that carries over to music these days with the concerts, as I say. That has a big spin-off effect on the whole state economy too, doesn't it? I mean, when we do well in Origin, is it right? I don't know if it's just rumours or whether it's right that when we do well in that, it has a positive effect on how our economy and society works. Is that a fair statement?
Well, look, I couldn't say scientifically, but I think I think that that it does have a big impact on our psyche. I think when Queensland does well, we all feel good, and it does so much for our well-being, and but I'm sure there's flow-on effects for the economy. Certainly, there are specific events that have a direct impact. So that if you talk about something like the Magic Round, for example, because you're bringing so many spectators in from interstate for not just one day, but for 3, 4, 5, 6 days.
Yeah.
That has a massive impact on our economy. You try and get a hotel, you try and book a restaurant. Everywhere is pumping, and so those types of events have such a huge impact, and that's the role the stadium can play in helping deliver those flow-on effects. Not just around Caxton Street, but right through the whole city and the whole state.
Mate, as GM, when you're putting on those events, is that like a real stressful time, or is it just you got such a well-run machine within the team you got that it's just sort of another day and you just know how to do it, or were they hard or?
Look, I think definitely we've got some good systems and processes in place, but I think any event, no matter how big or small, can lead to a downfall if you haven't made sure you've done the planning well enough. Yes, some of those bigger events are fairly demanding. There are so many things happening, so many people involved, so many stakeholders, so many aspects happening around the stadium as part of that event that you've got to be involved in. But I think they're all quite stressful. But I think the two most important things are to don't take your eye off the ball, and then make sure that you stick to your proven plans, and just don't take anything for granted. You just got to make sure everything is double checked, and providing you do all that, you still might have some dramas, because through equipment failures or a whole range of things, anything can happen. But again, if you've got a contingency plans in place, you can deal with those fairly quickly. So they are all stressful, but I think teamwork and sticking to your tried and true methods is the way.
From an outsider looking in, one of the things I've always wondered about how it magically happens is the way you look after the turf there, because you go from the sporting games to the concerts to everything else. Is that just such a good science now that they've got it down, or is it a journey he's had to go to figure out how to look after the turf?
Look, it's still a challenge, and I've always said the turf is the biggest challenge that I ever had as managing the stadium, because if you need to open an extra bar, you can just pull in some more staff and put some extra cans in the fridge. But if your turf is in bad shape, there's nothing magical or miraculous about it. It just takes time. Nature, has its own way of dealing with that, and so you can't control the weather. You certainly, to a certain degree, you really can't control the scheduling, because we're open for business every day, so you've got to try and take on as many events as you can. So all of those things have a big impact on the field. The grounds team we have there, and I spoke before about having the best team. Our grounds team would be probably the best in Australia. They are absolutely amazing. The work that they do, we run more events than just about any other stadium in Australia. And the work that they do to maintain the venue and to deliver it to the standard they have is just incredible. Certainly, against a lot of odds. We've had floods, we've had cyclones, we've had torrential rain, we've had just relentless games one after the other, in rain, and the field getting torn up and ripped up, and then you overlay concerts and all that sort of stuff. But our guys, come through it very well. They do a great job in the circumstances, given that you just can't control nature, but they can do the best they can to make sure they present the field in the best possible way.
Now, when you put the flooring down on the concerts, is that actually sitting on the turf, or do you have it sort of raised off the turf? Is it?
Those tiles actually have little pads underneath, so it does sit a little bit above the turf, which helps circulation, and there are slots in top of those tiles, so that not only allows air circulation but to get through. So generally those tiles you could leave down for 6 days without any great impact or dramatic impact on the turf.
And that team you have doing the field, are they local people, or the people you got in from around Australia, or?
We've only got a small team of 4 people that look after the stadium's grass full time, and that's not only the stadium grass, but also the surrounds, the landscaping, and everything that goes with it. They also look after the turf that we have growing on at the farm that's ready for us to replace at any time. So there's a regular requirement there to monitor that turf to make sure it's always going to be in a position where if we need to use it tomorrow, we can.
Yep.
So it's only a very small team that do that.
Right.
When you talk about those tiles and so on going down, that's actually done by, say, production people that are associated with the concert.
Right.
But under our supervision.
So I guess the next thing to happen to the stadium now is we need an Alan Graham statue out front. That'll be coming up soon.
Yeah, no, not too sure about that. But I think I'm just very pleased that we've got the stadium to where it is now. Pleased to be able to walk away knowing the stadium is in such a healthy state, financially and event-wise. There's still a big pipeline of content that's locked away that will get rolled out over the next year or two. Massive big events, all that's locked in. So, everything's in good shape. So from that point of view, I take a lot of satisfaction being able to walk away and knowing that, I've done the best that I could. And the stadium's still got, a great future ahead. Obviously, there'll be a new management regime there, and I wish them all the best as they work through the coming months.
Well, mate, on behalf of as just an average Queensland guy, on behalf of so many of my friends and everything, thank you for everything you've done there, because you made that place such a part of our life, mate, and run it so well that it's something that Queenslanders are proud of. And it's very rare that people get that chance to have that impact on society like that. And mate. So thank you very much for everything you've done with that.
No, look, thanks, Nick. That was very kind of you to say that, mate. And I just feel very fortunate and privileged that I've had that opportunity, really appreciate all the support I've had from everyone, including yourself over the years. We've known each other for
long time now.
30 odd years, I reckon. And it's always been great, to have those types of relationships. People that you've had a long relationship with, and if you need anything, who you can reach out.
Well, that's right. I mean, that's and this isn't just sort of waving your flag like for no reason. But one thing I got to say, mate, you've been so generous when there's been an idea or something coming up that I needed to call you about, and you're so generous, and how busy you were with doing everything, getting back and communicating and being a mate in that way. And I know you've done that with so many people, and that's part of that whole community spirit that I think you've played a major part in. So, mate, just thank you for that. Mate, is there anything that, with the fogs or anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to toss in, that we've gone through most of it?
Yeah, mate, I think we've covered some pretty broad territory. Yeah, I think we're
That's great. Good. Mate, we did have there was a little bit of issue with sound cutting in a little bit and out through our chat a little bit, but I don't think it was enough to affect what we were talking about. So I've just let it go, and it's great. But thank you very much for your time on this, mate. I hope we can catch up sometime soon. And I know,
absolutely. Well, mate, I've got time on my side.
Yeah, which are you in Brizzy, or are you up the coast, or where are you at these days?
No, we're actually down at Hope Island.
Nice.
So it's paradise.
No, absolutely. All right, mate. All the best. Thank you for your time on that.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Good to talk to you, mate.